History is a place filled with strange and fascinating figures. Some are great, some are infamous, and sometimes, two completely opposing extremes exist in the same world. Today, I will tell you about two powerful women of the Middle Ages, both noble, wealthy, intelligent, and leaving an unforgettable mark on history. But in two completely opposite ways. One gave everything away. One took everything. One was canonized as a saint. One was locked in a sealed room until death. Two fates, two paths, but both are remembered by history. So, who is the true legend? Let's find out together. The Blood Countess, Bathory Ursibet, serial killer or victim of malicious rumors? If you think nosy old ladies in the neighborhood are scary, let me introduce you to a woman who made history shudder, Bathory Ursibet, also known as Elizabeth Bathory. Not only was she a Hungarian princess and the richest countess in Europe, but she also earned the infamous title of the Blood Countess, accused of killing anywhere from 80 to 650 people. But hold on, this isn't just a story about a deranged noblewoman. So, what's the truth? Sit down, grab a cup of tea, and let me tell you her tale. Born in 1560 into the prestigious Bathory family, Ursibet was the epitome of born with a silver spoon in her mouth. Her family controlled vast lands in Hungary and was so wealthy that gold and silver were practically piling up. But being of noble blood came with certain quirks, like relatives constantly marrying each other to keep the bloodline pure. The result? Some family members suffered from insanity, extreme violence, or bizarre eccentricities. You could say Ursibet grew up in a household that didn't lack drama. There are tales that, as a child, she witnessed servants being tortured for entertainment. Some records suggest she suffered from epilepsy and was treated with medieval methods, like smearing human blood on her lips to stop seizures. Honestly, what were doctors thinking back then? Despite the dark upbringing, Ursibet was intelligent, multilingual, and skilled in managing finances and politics. But her life took a much darker turn after marriage. In 1575, Ursibet married Ferenc Nadasdy, a military general infamous for his love of torturing enemies in the most brutal ways. This couple was the medieval version of a match made in hell because Ferenc was anything but gentle. As a wedding gift, Ferenc gave Ursibet Szeged Castle, which would later be rumored to be a hell on earth. But at first, Ursibet wasn't killing anyone, she was just an exceptionally skilled estate manager and even helped her husband oversee military affairs. Since Ferenc spent most of his time fighting the Ottoman Empire, Ursibet was left alone in the castle. That's when she developed an interest in life sciences, in a rather creepy way. In 1575, Ursibet married Ferenc Nadasdy, a military general infamous for his love of torturing enemies in the most brutal ways. This couple was the medieval version of a match made in hell because Ferenc was anything but gentle. As a wedding gift, Ferenc gave Ursibet Szeged Castle, which would later be rumored to be a hell on earth. But at first, Ursibet wasn't killing anyone, she was just an exceptionally skilled estate manager and even helped her husband oversee military affairs. Since Ferenc spent most of his time fighting the Ottoman Empire, Ursibet was left alone in the castle. That's when she developed an interest in life sciences, in a rather creepy way. In 1610, King Matthias II ordered an investigation into Szeged Castle. When soldiers raided the place, they reportedly found bodies everywhere, blood-stained walls, and prisoners locked in dungeons, waiting their turn to become beauty ingredients. Over 300 witnesses testified that Ursibet had killed between 80 and 650 people. However, she wasn't executed due to her noble status. Instead, she was sentenced to life imprisonment, sealed inside a room in her own castle, with only a small hole left open for food. In 1614, Ursibet died in solitude, ending a life shrouded in mystery. So, who was Ursibet Bathory really? A sadistic serial killer? Or a victim of political schemes? Historical records confirm that she did mistreat servants, but the number of victims may have been exaggerated. There is no concrete evidence that she actually bathed in blood. It's possible that she was simply a wealthy and powerful woman in an era dominated by men, making her an easy target for political rivals eager to seize her fortune. Whether fact or fiction, the legend of the Blood Countess remains one of the most chilling tales in European history. Would you dare to try her version of skincare? As for me, I'd rather run the other way. The full option saint, Margaret of Scotland, a kind-hearted princess, but no damsel in distress. Throughout history, there have been two types of princesses, the kind who burst into tears at the slightest trouble, waiting for a prince on a white horse to rescue them, and the kind who come with the full package, intelligence, courage, and power, capable of changing history without needing a prince at all. Margaret of Scotland was undoubtedly the latter. Not only was she a beautiful princess, but she was also a brilliant strategist, a religious and cultural reformer, and, ultimately, a canonized saint. Margaret was born in 1045 into the English royal family, but from a young age, she played the game of family escape a bit too often. When her father, Prince Edward Atheling, was exiled from England, Margaret's entire family had to travel all the way to Hungary to seek refuge. There were no tuition fees for studying abroad, but the cost was a childhood spent constantly on the move. After her father's death, Margaret returned to England with her mother and siblings. Unfortunately, England at the time was experiencing a small event, the Norman invasion. Remember 1066? And so, once again, Margaret's family had to pack their bags and flee. This time, they ended up in Scotland. The King of Scotland at the time was Malcolm III, a ruler described as both brave and a bit of a rough diamond, great in battle but somewhat lacking in finesse. When he met Margaret, he fell for her at first sight. And so, instead of being seen as a troublesome foreign princess, Margaret quickly became the Queen of Scotland, marrying Malcolm in 1070. From then on, she became the golden hand of Scottish reform. When Margaret became queen, she quickly realized that Scotland at the time was a bit old-fashioned, with a wild way of life, unstandardized religious practices, and a royal palace that looked more like a fortress covered in swords. No problem. Easy fix. Margaret set out to renovate Scotland's culture and society, upgrading education. She encouraged the establishment of schools, ensuring that the Scottish people could wield not just swords but also books. Religious reform. Margaret helped standardize Catholic rituals, bringing Scotland more in line with the rest of Christendom. Helping the poor. One of her most famous deeds was personally cooking and serving food to the poor. Yes, a queen standing in the kitchen, no wonder the people adored her. Improving the royal court. After marrying Malcolm, she quickly transformed him from a rough warrior into a cleaner, more refined king. She taught him to eat with utensils instead of his hands, and introduced the royal court to European-style banquets and etiquette. Although Margaret and Malcolm were one of the most powerful couples in Scottish history, tragedy still struck. In 1093, Malcolm III and their eldest son were killed in battle against the English. Upon hearing the news, Margaret, already gravely ill, was so heartbroken that she passed away just 3 days later, like a real-life version of dying from sorrow. She died at the age of 48 but left behind a tremendous legacy for Scotland. Later, in 1250, the Pope canonized her, making her Saint Margaret of Scotland, the patron saint of the nation. So, who was Margaret of Scotland? A royal English princess, exiled from her homeland, who went on to become the Queen of Scotland. A great reformer who transformed a wild kingdom into a more civilized and orderly nation. A kind-hearted woman who cared for the poor, helped her people, and even taught her husband proper table manners. A saint, honored by the world for her noble life. So, what's the takeaway? Sometimes, unexpected detours can lead you to a great destiny. And if you want to be a true princess, be like Margaret, not just beautiful, but also intelligent, strong, and kind.